A pleasure to meet all at last, and welcome back once again to HJN Super Graphics, where, in this particular instance, we're actually going to go with something that was deemed a good concept with a bad draw. We're going to talk about a contender known as Death or Treat. Well, here it is pretty much. Death or Treat is actually one of those games that actually does have a unique feel for what it is. For one thing, this is made as a roguelite and hack and slash type of game. As in, this is one of those games where you can travel from left to right on the screen or from right to left, depending on where you want to go. The screen scrolls around, enemies spawn, and all you gotta do is beat them all up and collect the currency that they drop. Or basically any items in general that they happen to drop for you. The thing is, this is certainly one of those games that happens to give off similar feels to other beat 'em up style games or anything involving close combat. But let's be real here. I will say that the real star of the show is the idea of Halloween based comedy, or at least parodizing real life phenomenons through the usage of any Halloween related puns to them. The thing is, Death or Treat allows us to take the role of a little ghost, which that it is in fact named Scary. Yeah, that's his name, Scary. And it's even spelled in the same way as how Scary is actually spelled. Anyways, though, the Halloween spirit happens to have gone missing from the town known as Hollow Town. And Scary, along with his friends, are supposed to restore spirituality to the town itself. And how is he supposed to do that? Well, he is to enact vengeance against the many, many enemies that he encounters. It's not entirely confirmed exactly how it all took place, but the real effect here is that, well, it's definitely one of those type of games where at first you start off small, but then you can work your way up towards a real big advantage. I mean, you start off with some weak weapons here and there, and while your accompanying friends will also give you tips and various things about what to do here, some combat info, as well as some information that may be crucial to understanding the enemy's weak points. This type of game basically does center us in Hollow Town as the main base, or safe zone, of which that you can not only save your game, but believe it or not, I will get back to that point in a moment here, because after all, upon leaving Hollow Town with your weapons and everything else that you may need for your journey, you basically make your way through a series of different levels. And these levels, of course, can vary from anything. I mean, you got mad scientist labs, underground caverns, lava pits, smoke screens, ice realms, chasms. Well, basically, a lot of different locations in which that you can visit. And while I will say that Death or Treat itself is mainly a bit of an average game for it, I will say that the unique thing about the gameplay that we've gone through so far is the fact that this is all hand-drawn animation and traditionally hand-drawn backgrounds. Yeah, the thing is, this is more of a combination of 2D elements with hand-drawn backgrounds. So that at least is a unique thing for those who are pretty much spiteful against things that are 3D or CG related. So if you ever want to go hit up the shelves, definitely grab this game for the feels and looks that are as nostalgic as possible, like 1980s nostalgic, especially 1980s nostalgic. Otherwise, this is definitely one of those games that does tend to give off feels in the same way to other fighting games. Because after all, you're side-scrolling, you're platforming, you're beating up enemies. It might as well be like a combination of most platformers and beat-em-up games from way back in the day. And while not many people find this game to be very appealing in that sense, it still is a rather good contender for what it is. I will say that in spite of the reviews that people have given out on this, critics and regular gamers alike, Sauna Studios, the developer of the game itself, should feel more than just proud for giving us a nice Halloween-themed game of which that a ghost is hacking and slashing his way through the forests, caverns, lava pits, etc. Also, he can collect spirits and restore Hollow Town from there. Let's talk a bit more about Hollowtown, by the way, because after all, one big detail is prevalent in the game itself. Have you ever wanted to know what happens in Death Retreat every time you die? Well, guess what? It automatically sends you back all the way to Hollowtown from where you came from. Yeah, this is the type of format to where every time you die, you get sent straight back to square one. However, there is a bit of a loophole in this situation. You actually get to keep a hold of all the elements that you had collected. So the thing is, every time Scary gets killed, all of the spirits that he's collected, all of the resources, all of the items in particular that he has collected throughout the entire leg of the journey, in particular, will all be spared for him and sent back to Hollowtown for him to use for later. And the spirits, for the most part, do act as the currency in this entirety of the game itself. What exactly do you use the spirits for? Well, for the most part, you can use them to build Hollowtown from the ground up. You can use them to rebuild or restore buildings. You can use them to trade in with the local merchants and get a hold of certain items, as well as trade in the items and whatnot that you don't want. Anything that you don't need, you can get spirit back, trade the spirit in for other things, etc. It's a lot of the same old type of stuff that happens in most other RPG games, to where if there's items that you don't want, you can cash them in and get currency in exchange, and then you can use the currency to get a hold of anything better. You can get better weapons, upgrade your skill sets, and basically update your stats to the point where they can make you more formidable of an enemy to the many enemies in the game itself. So this definitely has a bit of a run-of-the-mill factor to it, where it does feel familiar yet generic in a way. So I wouldn't say that this is a great contender for those who are actually looking forward to get a hold of a good game that has the basics of RPG as well as stat updates. Of course, the real big thing here is you really got to get used to the fact that this is one of those type of games where it sets you back all the way to square one. At least you get to keep everything that you got in a hold of on your run. And for the next run, you can basically go in with stronger weapons and upgraded stats and possibly more things, depending on what you've done with all that you've collected. So that seems to be a baseline with some games that we've seen in recent years. One other contender that I could talk about is The Last Stand Aftermath, but we'll save that one for some other time, because one big star of the show type of thing that I might as well point out here is the comedy that they put in. I mean, there's puns everywhere. I mean, look at Hollowtown, for example. Deathflix. Necrosoft. They're literally making parodies based off of famous companies over the years. Like, Hollowtown sure does know when to make some good yucks, at the same time giving us the unique and somber tone that is fairly expressed by most of the characters. Not many of them can pull off good jokes, as it seems, but at least the signs depicting the buildings that you help work with and restore to their former glory before they were taken down because of the, well, disappearance of Halloween spirits, they at least are there to actually help us get a good laugh, or some chuckles at the very least. But you know what? I can't exactly say that Death Retreat is a great game for what it is. It's really good for what it is, though. It still does have that unique 2D feel to it. With the hand-drawn animation and backgrounds, that alone can score a lot of points, especially from those who are very, very against the likes of what we got nowadays. I mean, let's be real here. We're in simpler times nowadays. We don't need to draw every little detail that appears in every bit of animation. Though some people still do hand draw details in animation, especially for CG. Because how else are you supposed to get the details to look good, if not feel good? And while most people might hate that sort of stuff, that's just what it is. Time to make life simpler. Better to enjoy. Better to work with. And it'll definitely keep our mental and physical health in check. Unlike what people had to do back in the day, where people would catch on fire on the set, or someone's hand would cramp up from drawing, or some people would even get fired for not working hard enough. These days, you could basically let that stuff be things of the past. Otherwise, I will say that the progression system implanted in here does work pretty well for what it is, and the game itself might seem a bit mediocre, but I do like the idea of having a hack and slash when playing as a ghost, swiping blades all over the place, and taking down giant enemies that are much bigger than himself. I mean, that's the thing about the game itself, and that's the thing about how most games are. You basically play as a certain character. You get stronger over time and is able to take on enemies way bigger than himself. That's just how most gamers will feel empowered to be something they're not. And while that's technically seen as philosophy nowadays, the way I see it, it's more of a unique charm. Something that always sticks with us gamers. The fact that most of us might not feel like we're that good or perfect. We can always look up to our in-game protagonist as some sort of role model to help us feel stronger and more encouraged to do stuff in life. But hey, don't take my word for it. If you're really wanting to get a hold of this game, do so. It might be worth it for a number of reasons. Otherwise, some of the critics and gamers out there whom have talked a lot of crap about the game and given it some low or midway reviews and ratings, they might be right in some ways. In any case though, thank you very much for sticking with me in this whole entirety of Spectrums and all the games so far that I've covered. Yet, I will say, according to this notepad here, I still got plenty more to work with. And from what I can count, there's at least 28 more titles that I hope to cover. So, the next 28 days, I'm going to be covering a lot more games. So, stick around for more HJN Super Graphics content. And as always, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, follow me wherever you can find me, and stay on the Hollywood side.